from behind. Stop! What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
All rise. United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois now is in session. The Honorable Judge Julius J. Hoffman presiding.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning.
69, CR 180, the United States of America versus David Dellinger et al. For trial.
Mayor, are proud to welcome a great political gathering of Americans who've come here to shape the future of a nation. And as long as I'm mayor of this town, there'll be law and order in Chicago.
Mr. Schultz, representing the government.
The government, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, will prove in this case an overall plan of the 8 defendants to encourage numerous people to come to the city of Chicago during the Democratic National Convention, which was held from August 26th through August 29th, 1968. They planned to bring these people into Chicago to create a situation where these people would riot. The government will prove that David Dellinger...
Well, I was described as an anti-war activist or a pacifist leader. And today I'm called a peace activist. But I don't like any of those terms because I think you can't have peace without justice.
The defendant, Renard Davis.
I came out of a very conservative family that very much believed in American values. I would say I was a full-time activist, you know, with a passion to end the war in Vietnam.
Next to him, Thomas Hayden, who is standing.
Who is the last defendant you named?
Mr. Hayden.
The one that shook his fist in the direction of the jury?
That's my customary greeting, Your Honor.
It may be your customary greeting, but we do not allow shaking of fists in this courtroom.
It implied no disrespect to the jury. It is my customary greeting.
Regardless of what it implies, sir, there will be no fist shaking. And I caution you not to repeat it.
I began as a innocent enough, idealistic reformer, a student editor, a person that believed in civil rights. I had been a founder and an early president of Students for Democratic Society.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Schultz, yes.
In promoting and encouraging this riot, the defendants Dellinger, Davis, and Hayden joined with 5 other defendants to create the riots in Chicago during the convention. The defendant, Abbott Hoffman.
The jury is directed to disregard the kiss thrown by the defendant, Hoffman. And the defendant is directed not to do that sort of thing again.
But here we were, grown up in the late 50s with the whole idea of material success, the designer brain mentality. We could have credit cards if we wanted. We could have good paying jobs. We didn't have to worry about keeping up with Mr. Jones because we were Mr. Jones. And we said no to that primetime culture. We just said, chuck it. We just said it's boring, it's spiritually unrewarding, and it's unjust for people too poor to participate in it. Now, they couldn't understand that at all.
And with him, a man named Jerry Rubin.
I was writing books at the time. I was a political activist. My job, full-time, was inspiring young people to think for themselves, to resist authority, and to create a new social order in the United States. That's how I saw myself.
These men called themselves leaders of the Yippies. 2 more of these individuals are Lee Weiner.
I had a master's degree in sociology, and I was just about finished with my doctorate in sociology. Being nothing more than a nice middle-class Jewish boy doing what his parents grew him up to be, which is speaking for himself and for helping other people secure their rights.
And John Freund.
I was an assistant professor of chemistry at the University of Oregon. At the same time, I was a political activist, a social activist.
And the 8th person, the last person who joined, is a man named Bobby Seale.
Huey P. Newton and I created and founded an organization called the Black Panther Party. We talk about full employment for our people, a power to determine our own destiny, our own black community.
The government will prove that defendants Dellinger, Davis, Hayden, Hoffman, Rubin, and Seale traveled across state lines to Chicago with intent to organize, to incite, and to promote a riot. And the government will prove that defendant Freunds and Weiner taught and demonstrated to other people the use and making of incendiary devices to be used to further this disorder. The government will prove each of these defendants guilty as charged. Thank you.
Voices of angry protest are heard throughout the land, crying for all manner of freedoms.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is William Kunstler. I'm an attorney from the city of New York, and I'm one of the attorneys on this case. We hope to prove before you that this prosecution, which you are hearing, is the result of two motives on the part of the government.
Objection. Is there any motives of prosecution, if the court please?
Your Honor, it is a proper defense to show motive.
I sustain the objection. You may speak to the guilt or innocence of your clients, not to the motive of the government.
Your Honor, I'd always thought that to show motive...
I sustain the objection, regardless of what you have always thought, Mr. Kunstler.
The evidence will show that the defendants, like many other citizens of the United States, came to protest in the finest American tradition. They came to Chicago to protest the continuation of this bloody and unjustified war. The evidence will show that there were forces in this city and in the national government who are absolutely determined to prevent this type of protest. What actually happened in the streets of Chicago was not a riot caused by demonstrators, but a riot engineered by the police. Before you is a classic example of government against people, of their rights violated by billy clubs. We will demonstrate that free speech died here in the streets under those clubs, and that the bodies of the demonstrators were sacrifices to its death.
Objection, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection. I direct the jury to disregard the last statement of the counsel for the defense.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Is there any other defense lawyer who wishes to make an opening statement? I take it that you're standing there means yes, you do, Mr. Weinglass.
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct. If Your Honor, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Kunstler indicated that persons who came to Chicago felt a moral anguish at what they considered to be wrongful conduct of this country. There was another group of people who came to Chicago, not for the purpose of protesting, but for the purpose of showing the public and the leaders and the rulers of this country that there was emerging a new culture. This group, generally called Yippies, came here for a conclave to be known as the Festival of Life. They had invited a number of rock bands relevant to the youth culture. I do not ask you to accept or like or agree with any of the speeches which my clients might have given.
Your Honor, I object. Counsel argues the case. It is improper.
I sustain the objection.
So I ask you to keep an open mind and to await before making your judgment. Thank you.
Does any other defense lawyer wish to make an opening statement? Just a minute, sir. Who is your lawyer?
Charles R. Gary.
Bobby Seale was in jail pending a murder trial in Connecticut where he was supposed to be a defendant and which later exonerated him.
Now, Bobby's lawyer is Charles Gary, and Charles was having a medical operation at the time.
The man had been cut open. I mean, how is he going to come to trial? All we needed was a little postponement, you know what I mean? Like 2, 3, 4 weeks or something like this. The judge wasn't going to do that later for that.
Mr. Kunstler, do you represent Mr. Seale?
No, Your Honor. As far as Mr. Seale has indicated to me that because of the absence of Charles R. Gary...
Have you filed his appearance?
I have filed an appearance for Mr. Seale, yes.
All right. I will permit you to make another opening statement on behalf of Mr. Seale, if you like. I will not permit a party in the case to...
Your Honor, I cannot compromise Mr. Seale's position.
I don't ask you to compromise it, sir. But I will not permit him to address the jury with his very competent lawyer standing there.
At a meeting on August 8, 1968, who said what?
Mr. Hoffman said he wanted the mayor to grant a permit for use of Lincoln Park. They wanted to use the park to sleep in. I said that the mayor had no authority over the park district.
Now calling your attention to August 21st, 1968. What brought you to the courtroom of Judge William Lynch?
There was a lawsuit filed by the National Mobilization Committee to End the War and by Mr. Rennie Davis, Tom Hayden, and others against the city of Chicago. I said that the city was predisposed to issue a permit for a march if Mr. Davis was willing to accept a reasonable proposal.
What happened then?
Well, Mr. Davis said that he wanted to meet within eyesight of the amphitheater. I pointed out no one was permitted in that area because of security precautions for the convention. He said if the city wants to avoid violence, you should take all the police and guardsmen away from the amphitheater, that it was his experience that the police actually caused violence. He also said that his members couldn't really be housed in hotel accommodations, that many of them didn't have money. He said that if the city doesn't give us the park, there will be tens of thousands of people without a place to stay. And they will go into the parks, and the police will drive them out, and there'll be disorder, tear gas, mace, billy clubs.
With respect to the law, which does not permit staying in the park beyond 11, was that requirement waived for the Boy Scouts?
Apparently, yes.
But don't you think it would have been wiser to let the kids sleep in the park?
I was told by Abby Hoffman that during the convention there would be 500,000 young people attending the Festival of Life. Mr. Rubin said they'd be holding classes in defense against the police. Abby Hoffman said he was prepared to tear up our town, and that if we were smart, we the city, we would give them $100,000. Or better still, give him the $100,000 and he would leave town.
I said 200,000.
His festival would include, he said, body painting, nude inns at the beaches, public fornication, discussion of the draft, and draft evasion.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to offer evidence with respect to the defendant Dellinger only.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the testimony the witness is about to give is offered only with respect to the defendant Derringer.
I think Your Honor means Dellinger.
Dellinger, that's right.
Mr. Dillinger said we must issue a...
I'm going to get back to you, Mr. Witness. I mispronounced the defendant's name. You said Dillinger. It's Derringer. We were both wrong. You mean Mr. Derringer, do you not?
Dellinger.
Dellinger said that it was necessary that we issue a permit for sleeping in Lincoln Park in order to minimize destruction.
Now, if my understanding is correct, all your meetings with Jerry and Abby took place in City Hall.
Your Honor, I object to the reference to these two little... to Abby and Jerry. Let's call the defendants by their proper names.
I agree.
Now, you testified in your meeting with Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman some mention of $100,000. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you take that discussion seriously?
Yes, I most certainly did.
Now, in your meeting with Rennie and Tom...
Oh, Your Honor, here we go again. Another 29-year-old being Rennie babied.
I object to that, Your Honor. Will you direct the jury to disregard the Rennie baby remark as unfounded?
If the United States attorney said that, I certainly do. Crowd the baby out of your minds. We're not dealing with babies here.
My mother, who's a Republican, now 75-year-old woman, sent me a 5-pound box of jelly beans.
Jelly beans!
All rise. The court is now in session.
On Sunday evening, I observed Jerry Rubin in Lincoln Park pointing at the police officers, and then he began to shout. He used some profanity.
If profane words were spoken, part of something an individual had said, I think it's appropriate in law that a witness so testify.
He says, look at these motherfucking pigs standing over here. Take off your guns and we'll fight you hand to hand.
I was assigned to follow Mr. Jerry Rubin.
During all this period, did you ever see him throw an object at another human being?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. He threw an object.
Yes, he threw a sweater.
At who?
At me.
I take it you were uninjured by the sweater.
Was dressed in a wash shirt, khaki pants, and gym shoes, sneakers.
Would you please relate what the defendant Davis said about civil disobedience and the Democratic National Convention?
He said there were going to be demonstrations and civil disobedience to disrupt the convention.
And neither mob violence nor police brutality have any place
So
in
the prosecution had the point of view that we were international revolutionaries, and they brought on a parade of policemen.
Among them were informants who penetrated our ranks, which wasn't very difficult to do since we were a very casual organization.
I submit to the court that the right of persons to meet, to assemble, and to discuss outstanding political social questions without fear of intimidation of police officers is paramount. And to allow undercover agents to attend the meetings and make reports is a violation of the First Amendment, of freedom of speech and assembly. For that reason, I ask that the officer's testimony be stricken.
Your Honor, I object to their motion.
We're opening a mail, and somebody opened the wrong envelope quickly.
And in it was some very green marijuana, maybe about 4 ounces.
You approve of your client laughing while the court is making a decision?
I didn't hear, Your Honor. I was talking with Mr. Davis.
Well, you seem to be enjoying their laughter because you smiled yourself.
A smile is not forbidden in federal court, I think, Your Honor. I think I ought to put on record that Mr. Davis complimented Mr. Ferran on making a good point.
Motion will be denied. And as long as you are putting things on the record, I think I will put on the record the posture of one of your clients. This is the United States District Court. Have a look at him lying down there like he's on the ground.
May reflect his attitude toward what is going on in this court, Your Honor.
Oh, I think it does. I think it does reflect his attitude.
Then it is free speech.
And that attitude will be appropriately dealt with at a time. Now, can 3 marshals back there deal with those comments?
Hey, man.
My assignment was an undercover investigator.
Did you in any way alter your physical appearance to conduct your assignment as an undercover investigator?
Yes, I did. I allowed my hair to grow long. I allowed myself to go without a shave for approximately 4 to 6 weeks. I purchased the attire of a motorcycle gang member, which is motorcycle boots, a black T-shirt, black Levi's, and a black leather vest. And I also rented a motorcycle.
On Monday in Lincoln Park, who did you meet with?
I was introduced to Abby Hoffman to be one of his bodyguards. Hoffman shook my hand and said he was glad to have me with him. I said to Hoffman that last night's confrontation was a pretty good one, and Hoffman said to me, they pushed us out of the park, but tonight we're going to hold the park.
What did you say when Hoffman told you this, please?
I told him he could count on me in every way possible in helping him, doing my best to keep him from being arrested.
Where'd you go then?
Tom Hayden had been arrested, and a march was formed to go to police headquarters to free Hayden. I was introduced by Jerry Rubin as his personal bodyguard, and he was told I could be trusted. Rubin said that there's too many pigs here. Let's go to the Hilton. So we went north of Michigan Avenue. When the march was midpoint past the Logan statue, the crowd broke and ran up the statue screaming, take the hill. They climbed the statue and displayed the Viet Cong flag, the red flag, and the black flag. Rubin said that this was better than Iwo Jima. I saw Rennie Davis with a microphone saying, hold the statue, don't let the pigs move you out. Rubin said, we've got to do more to keep the crowd active. We want them in the park for the Bobby Seale speech.
I object on the grounds that my lawyer is not here. You know my lawyer is not here, Your Honor, and I want my lawyer here when he mentions my name and testifies against me.
Ask him to sit down, Mr. Marshall.
Sit down, Mr. Seale.
Your Honor, this little episode for the benefit of the jury is intended simply to misconstrue the fact that this man originally had 4 lawyers to begin with.
In the speech, Bobby Seale said that the time for singing "We Shall Overcome" is past, and now is the time to act, to go out and buy a .357 Magnum and a .45 and kill the pigs. Rubin began to yell, "Kill the pigs, kill the cops," and the man with a plastic bag said to Rubin, "I'm gonna fill this bag with human shit and throw it at the pigs." And Rubin laughed and said, "Good, it'll be good food for the pigs."
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. No further questions, Your Honor.
When you heard Jerry Rubin speak, was there any change in the mood of the assemblage?
Not that I noticed.
Did the group become violent in any way?
No, sir.
Now, concerning Mr. Seale's speech, was not the only reference to killing the pigs when he talked about self-defense against an unjust attack? Isn't that the context?
That's what you said, Mr. Weinglass. That's not what I have said.
The problem with the trial from our point of view was that we were being diverted from our primary job. Our primary job was to organize anti-war activities.
And we wanted to participate very seriously in the Vietnam moratorium.
It may have been the largest nationwide turnout of Americans against any war in American history.
Yes! Good morning, troops. Good morning.
All rise. The court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Julius J. Hoffman presiding.
Your Honor, we have made a motion for the suspension of the trial for tomorrow, which is being declared a day called Vietnam Moratorium. The defendants came to Chicago to protest this brutal imperialistic war. They feel they are being prosecuted for doing so. They think it very fitting for them to be permitted to join the millions of countrymen who desire the same thing.
Your Honor, there's been some evidence presented that these men took part in a cynical plan to use the tragic issue of the war to tear down the formal structure of the government of the United States. Now, many of us feel the tragedy of war, especially some of us who have fought in one, and that they should now ask to join what may be a sincere effort.
Your Honor, I think these personal attacks of the defendants are uncalled for. I think they are making a fervent request to protest the deaths of thousands, millions of innocent people whose lives have been corrupted and prevented by the utter horror that goes on in your name and in my name.
Not in my name.
It is in your name, too. In the name of the United States.
You just include yourself. Don't join me with you, goodness. Defendant's motion for an adjournment will be denied.
Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Now get said again.
The names of those who died in the war this week are Mark King, Thomas Diaz, Tron T. Line, John Cohen, Lee Hu, Richard Washington, Trong Bach, Alan Peterson, Tron Von Duke, Roger Briansky.
Hey, come on. Knock it off.
Sir. Mr. Hoffman, we are observing the moratorium.
I'm Judge Hoffman, sir.
I believe in equality, sir, so I prefer to call people Mr. or by their first name.
Sit down.
We propose that we observe a moment's silence. Court, please. I would like the marshal to take this man into custody. We only wanted a moment of silence. I object to this man speaking out in court.
You needn't object. I forbid him to disrupt the proceedings, and I note for the record that his name is,
David Dellinger is my name, sir.
The name of this man who has attempted to disrupt proceedings is David Dellinger, and the record will clearly indicate that, Mr. Reporter. And I direct him and all the others not to repeat such occurrences.
Your Honor, I want to object to Mr. Ferrand's yelling in the presence of the jury. Your Honor has admonished counsel on defense for yelling.
Your Honor, this is outrageous. This man is a mouthpiece. I just look at him wearing an armband like his clients. For any lawyer to come into a courtroom and have no respect for the court. The government protests his attitude and would like to move the court to make note of his conduct.
Your Honor, I think the temper and the tone of voice and the expression on Mr. Ferrand's face tells more than any picture could tell.
Of my contempt for Mr.
To call another attorney a mouthpiece, and for Your Honor to not open his mouth and say this is not to be done in this court, I think violates the sanctity of this court. It is a word that Your Honor knows is contemptuous and contumacious.
Don't tell me what I know.
I am wearing an armband in memoriam to the dead, which is no disgrace in this country. I want him admonished.
Did you say you wanted to admonish me?
I want you to admonish him.
Let the record show I do not admonish the United States attorney because he has properly represented his client, the United States of America.
Call another attorney a mouthpiece? Are you turning down my request? After this disgraceful episode, you are not going to say anything?
I not only turn it down, I ignore it.
That speaks louder than words.
Sir, you are a lawyer in the United States District Court permitting your client to stand up in the presence of the jury and disrupt these proceedings. I do not know how to characterize it.
No, we do not permit our clients. They are free, independent human beings who have been brought by the government into this courtroom.
That is right. They are free. But they will conform to the directions of the court here, sir.
Mr. Davis said there would be no way to deal logically or rationally with the Chicago police, that they were the most belligerent, unthinking law enforcement agency, and that there was no hope of avoiding a confrontation with the Chicago police. He said that if the demonstrators tried to sleep in the park, they could expect to be surrounded by the police, and that they should form separate groups and break out of the park and go into the city. And in his own words, tie it up and bust it up. If an arrest situation commenced, Mr. Davis said, we just riot.
Calling your attention to an earlier afternoon in Lincoln Park, August 24th. What was going on there?
25 or 30 people lined up side by side in rows of 5 or 6 so that they all faced in the same direction. Then each row linked arms and they began to chant something to synchronized foot movements. Mr. Hayden told the group that this snake dance formation was the same type the Japanese students used to precipitate riots in Japan in 1960. He said that by getting people together in this formation, it aroused their emotions and was very good for breaking through police lines and moving people in the event of a riot situation.
Did you see any of the defendants directing those snake dances and those karate techniques?
Objection. Leading.
I don't believe it's leading. I overrule the objection. You may answer, sir.
Mr. Hoffman was leading one of those groups.
Do you describe your role as a paid informer?
No.
Do you recall making a lengthy statement to the FBI? And in it, what did you say your employer said to you?
He said, would you object to infiltrating SDSN National Mobilization in order to get stories pertinent to the Democratic National Convention? I said I would.
Your Honor, there's something happening. I don't understand what's happening, except that the marshals are asking people to leave.
I know nothing about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will not have talking, finger-waving, or any distraction. Do I make myself clear? I think there's a bit of racism involved myself.
Your Honor, may the records show that a number of the marshals are black people. This is our daily exercise for getting stories in the newspapers. It's just so utterly ridiculous.
All I get from your clients constantly is a laugh. Just this second, they sit there and laugh at a judge of the highest trial court in the United States.
I don't want to die. I don't want to be anybody's martyr. But, to my wife, let my kid know that I just stood up for some human justice.
There is a motion here of Defendant Bobby Seale to be permitted to defend himself.
I will hear you, Mr. Seale.
I want to present this motion on behalf of myself. I am not a lawyer, but I do know that I, as one of the defendants, have a right to defend myself. So, I, Bobby Seale, move the court as follows. Because I am denied the lawyer of my choice, Charles R. Gary, I am forced to be my own counsel and to defend myself. I require my release from custody so I can interview necessary witnesses. do the necessary investigating and all other things that being in custody makes impossible. Cross-examine witnesses, make all necessary motions, and prove my innocence.
Have you finished, sir?
Yes.
Your Honor, the other defendants would like to join in this motion. I'd like to call Your Honor's attention to Adams versus the United States, where the Supreme Court said, the Constitution does not force a lawyer on a defendant. Mr. Seal filed that he does not desire to have me or any other attorney.
Your Honor, I know I have gotten some attacks from the government saying we playing games over here. I am not playing no game with my life being stuck on the line. And I want to put that into the record to explain my situation.
Mr. Schultz?
Your Honor, this is a ploy. It's ludicrous. The defendants know perfectly well that if Mr. Seal were to cross-examine witnesses here and argue to the jury, we would have a mistrial in 2 minutes. It's a game they're playing with the court.
In the view of the court, the defendant Seal is now represented by competent counsel. Mr. Kunstler, having filed his appearance in Mr. Seal's behalf, I find now to allow the defendant Seal to act as his own attorney would produce disruptive effect. The complexity of the case makes self-representation inappropriate. Motion will be denied.
I should be allowed to defend myself.
I will ask...
I should be allowed to speak so I can defend.
Quiet.
Don't tell me to shut up. I got a right to
Mr.
speak.
Seal, I admonish you that any outburst, such as you have just indulged in, will be appropriately dealt with. I must order you not to do it again.
In other words, you are saying you are going to put me in contempt of court for speaking on behalf of
Will
myself?
you be quiet? That is all. I will not argue with you. You have lawyers to speak for you.
They don't speak for me. I want to represent myself.
Mr. Marshall, will you go to that man and ask him to be quiet?
I still want to defend myself, and I know I have the right to
be quiet.
Hey, man. Now, I just want to let him know that. I'm racist. You know, the black man tries to get a fair trial in this country. United States government, huh? Nixon and the rest. Well, go ahead, continue. I'll watch and get railroaded.
I filled out a form from the National Mobilization Committee stating that I'd like to be a marshal for the Democratic Convention.
During this time, had you been otherwise employed?
Yes, as a member of Chicago Police Department.
Oink, oink. Now, calling your attention to Friday, August 9th, 1968, in the morning, where were you?
I went to the National Mobilization Committee headquarters. Ernie Davis was there, David Dellinger, and many other people. Mr. Davis said that there would be many demonstrations throughout the city, and the purpose of these would be to stretch the police force out. He said we would block traffic going down the street, we would block people from going in and out of buildings. We would smash windows and generally try to shut the loop down. Lee Weiner said that the marshal would probably wear helmets, and John Freund said that we should break up into small groups, and these groups should be violent. Everyone in the group agreed with this, and Abby Hoffman was at this meeting.
Do you see Mr. Hoffman here in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Would you point him out, please?
He shot me with his finger. His hair is very unkempt.
Now, on Tuesday, August 27th, where were you?
I was in Lincoln Park, and there was a rally going on.
Did you recognize any of the speakers?
Jerry Rubin gave a speech, Phil Oakes sang, and the person who identified himself as Bobby Seale spoke.
I object to that because my lawyer is not here. I've been denied my right to defend myself in this courtroom. I object to this man's testimony against me because I have not been allowed my constitutional right.
I repeat to you, sir, you have a lawyer. Your lawyer is Mr. Kunstler.
He does not represent me.
Now, you just keep on this way, and...
Keep on what?
Just sit
Keep
down.
on what? Keep on getting denied my constitutional rights.
Will you be quiet?
Now, I still object. I object because you know it's wrong. You denied me my right to defend myself in this courtroom. You think black people haven't got a mind? Well, we've got big minds, good minds, and we know how to come forth with constitutional rights. I'm not going to be quiet.
Are you getting all this, Miss Reporter?
Yes, sir.
I hope you got my part for the record, too. Did you get it, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And that outburst also.
I think you should understand that we support Bobby Seale in this. At least I do.
I haven't asked for your advice, sir. And please continue with the direct examination.
Now, calling your attention to Wednesday morning at National Mob headquarters on the 28th of August. What was said by whom?
John Freund was talking about how he'd purchased butyric acid and that he'd done it before in hotels and restaurants. He said it works really well in restaurants because butyric acid smells like vomit. He talked making tear gas, Molotov cocktails, mace, and other devices. And David Dellinger said, it looks like we're not going to have to march on the amphitheater, but we should have a march anyway to use it as a diversion to get people out of Lincoln Park.
Out of which park?
Grant Park. I'm sorry.
Mr. Ferrand, do you believe one word of that? Your Honor, may the record show the comment from the defendant Dellinger?
Yes, Mr. Dellinger has made several comments from time to time. The record may...
I asked Mr. Ferrand if he could possibly believe one word of that. I don't believe the witness believes it. I don't believe Mr. Ferrand believes it.
And continue to take his words. I admonish you, sir, not to interrupt this trial by your conversation or your remarks. You are not permitted to speak while your competent lawyer represents you.
Hello, Daddy.
I want to make a request, Judge Hoffman, that my wife be let in with my son. The marshal has attempted to harass her.
Mr. Marshall, you take care of the request as far as admission to the courtroom is concerned.
In other words, my son can't come in, right?
Mr. Marshall, I have not addressed this man. Will you undertake to see what he wants and do what is fair under the law? Cross-examine?
You were expelled, were you not, for throwing a university professor off a stage physically?
No, sir, I was not.
What were you expelled for?
I was expelled for being with the group of people that threw the president off the stage, sir.
Now, when you were participating in these discussions, is it not true that you were receiving pay from the police department of the city of Chicago?
That is correct.
By the way, prior to your coming into this courtroom, how many discussions did you have with the United States Attorney in this case regarding your testimony?
There were about 3.
And is it not true that Mr. Foran said to you that your previous reports and testimony did not implicate the defendants enough and that you should elaborate a little bit?
No. No, he didn't.
No further questions.
I would like to cross-examine the witness.
You have a lawyer here.
That man is not my lawyer. The man made statements against me. Furthermore, you are violating Title 42 United States Criminal Code because it states that the black man cannot be discriminated against in his legal defense. Hey, did you see me make a speech in Lincoln Park? Mr. William Frappoli, did you see me make a speech?
Mr. Marshall, will you ask that?
Did you see me make a speech on August 27th, Tuesday, supposedly August 27th, Tuesday?
You didn't answer any of those questions. Let the record show.
Let the record show that you are violating my constitutional rights. I want to cross-examine the witness. I want to cross-examine the witness.
Contemptuous conduct.
I admonish you. I am not in contempt of nothing. You are the one in contempt. You are in contempt of the constitutional rights of the mass of people in the United States.
Do you want to listen to me?
Why should I continue listening to you unless you're going to give me my constitutional rights? Let me defend myself.
Sir, that the law states.
Why don't you warn me? I have the right to defend myself.
I'm warning you that the court has the right to gag you.
Gag?
I don't want to do that.
Gag?
Under the law, you may be gagged.
I'm being railroaded already.
The court has the right, and I am telling you that
the court has no right whatever. The court has no right to stop me from speaking out on behalf of my constitutional rights.
The court will recess until tomorrow morning.
Everyone will rise.
I am not rising. I am not rising until he recognizes my constitutional rights. Why should I rise for him? He's not recognizing my constitutional rights.
See that he rises and that other one too.
Mr. Hayden, will you please rise?
Get all of the defendants to rise. And let the record show that the defendant, Mr. Hayden, has not risen. Mr. Kunstler, will you advise your clients to rise?
The court, please, it is my understanding that there is no legal obligation of the defendants to rise so long as his failure to rise is not disruptive.
You advise your clients not to rise, do you?
If Your Honor will direct me, I will advise them.
I direct.
Then I will pass on your direction. I will now pass on your direction to them. They have heard you direct me. I cannot in good conscience do more than that. They are free, independent human beings who must do as they please.
Let the record show that none of the defendants have risen. The court will be in recess, Mr. Marshall.
This was an American first.
Hear ye, hear, all done for Sir, your honorable judge, jury, say off and all rise.
Everyone does, but at 8, they don't get up. Oh, the Empire's like, the whole world's just collapsed.
It upset me and made me pretty pissed off that this fool can't see that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States says that every person has a right to have legal counsel of choice, what have you, etc., in a courtroom while going to court. Now, what's wrong with you? I mean, here's the rule. And if you violated the rules, you were violating the tenets of share and share alike and doing the others as you would have them doing it. That's what you were doing.
Brothers and sisters, we got a real situation going on up in here. Now, I want you to understand and appreciate the fact that you got a right to observe this trial and see what's going on. Am I right?
Right.
But I don't want you cats out there to get upset and emotional and start doing anything that's out of the ordinary. Am I right? If anyone attacks us, you know what to do. We defend ourselves. That's a principle of the party. We defend ourselves whether they have guns or not. We defend ourselves. If they make us leave the courtroom, we just leave. But be cool, because I got to do this myself.
Right on.
Your Honor, there are 25 marshals in here now, and they all got guns.
Your Honor, we are objecting to this armed camped aspect.
It is not an armed camp.
Military state.
If the court please, before you came into this courtroom, if the court please, Bobby Seale stood up and addressed this group, and he told these people in the audience that if he's attacked, they know what to do.
You lying. I told them to defend themselves. You a rotten, racist, pig, fascist liar. I told them, I said, if they were attacked, they have a right to defend themselves. And I hope the record carries that, and I hope the record shows that Tricky Dick Schultz is a liar, and we have a right to defend ourselves. And if you attack me, I will defend myself.
If the court please, that is what he said, just as he related.
You're darn right.
Let the record show the tone of Mr. Seale's voice was one of shrieking and pounding on the table. That'll be dealt with appropriately at some time in the future.
The record should indicate that Mr. Schultz stood at this lectern and raised his voice quite loudly in this courtroom.
Yes, I think he raised his voice. If what he said was the truth, I can't blame him for raising his voice.
Why don't you recognize my constitutional rights?
I have recognized every constitutional right you have.
You have not. I want to cross-examine.
All I have to tell you is this. If you speak once again, we will take such steps as are indicated in the circumstance.
If you try to suppress my constitutional right to speak out, then I can only see you as a bigot, a racist, and a fascist, as clearly indicated in the court record.
Mr. Fineglass.
Wineglass.
Wineglass. Will you please continue with the cross-examination of the witness if you desire to?
Now, you testified that you spent a lot of time, I believe, with John Froines, one of the defendants in this case.
Sometime, yes.
Isn't it a fact that you know from what John Froines told you that he doesn't even know how to make a firebomb or a Molotov cocktail?
He said he didn't know how to make a Molotov cocktail.
I have nothing further.
I want to request again, demand that I be able to cross-examine the witness. You got Benjamin Franklin and George Washington sitting up there in a picture behind you, and they were both slave owners. That's what they were. And you are acting in the same manner by denying me my constitutional right.
Mr. Seale,
See,
I have admonished you
right to defend myself in this courtroom.
What might happen to you if you keep on talking? Young man, if you keep this up...
Look, old man, you being exposed to the public and to the world that you do not care about people's constitutional rights to defend themselves.
Have him sit down, Mr. Marshall.
Why don't you recognize my constitutional right? I have a right to defend myself. I have a right to cross-examine the witness, man.
Show if the court please.
I want my
Marshals
right
are putting
to defend myself.
Bobby Seale in the seat,
I still have
putting
a
him
right
in the
to
chair.
defend
The
myself.
defendant
I want my
Dellinger
right to defend
physically
myself.
attempted to
I want
interfere
my
with
right,
them,
my
pushing the marshals out of the way.
To defend myself, I have that right.
Will you, Mr. Marshall, have that man sit?
What the hell are you doing? The record shows the defendant Dellinger is doing it again, the same thing just now.
I saw it myself.
Your Honor, the overall umbrella of intimidation is denying these defendants any chance of a fair trial.
Your Honor, I have never in 20 years of practice heard lawyers like Mr. Kunstler and Mr. Wineglass refuse to direct their clients to conduct themselves with courtesy and decency in the courtroom. As lawyers, our major obligation is our oath to uphold the law. And if the law is to be changed, then this government offers opportunity to change law by law and not by disruptive tactics.
Can I say something to... Can I say something to the court?
No, thank you. I have been called a racist and a fascist. He has pointed to the picture of George Washington behind me and called him a slave owner.
There were slave owners.
As though I had anything to do with that.
Hey, you got him up there?
He is known as the father of this country. And I would think that it is a pretty good picture to have in the United States District Court.
We all share a common guilt, Your Honor.
I didn't think I would ever live to sit on a bench and be in a courtroom where George Washington was assailed by a defendant and a judge was criticized for having his portrait on the wall.
All I am saying is that these defendants are not for disruption, they are for peace.
Say, what about Section 1982, Title 42 of the Code, where it states that a black man cannot be discriminated against in my legal defense in any court?
Mr. Seal, do you know what...
The law protects my right. Why don't you recognize that?
Mr. Seal, do you want to stop? Or do you want me to direct the march?
I want to argue the point about this so you can come to an understanding about the fact that I have a right to defend myself.
Take that defendant into the room in there and deal with him as he should be dealt with.
I still want to be represented. I still want to represent myself. I want to represent myself. I got a right. I got a right. I got a right.
The court will be in recess for a few minutes.
Your Honor, if Mr. Seal would express his willingness to be quiet, will the court entertain the possibility of Mr. Seal being unbound and ungagged?
I have tried so hard with all my heart to get him to sit in this court and be tried fairly and impartially. And I have been greeted on every occasion with all sorts of vicious invective. Mr. Seal, all of your constitutional rights have been and will be preserved in this trial. I assure you that if you have any evidence, when the time comes, we will listen attentively. If you will assure the court that you will be respectful and not cause disorder, I am willing that you resume your former place at the table. Will you, sir?
I would like to speak on behalf of
If you will give me your assurance, will you please indicate by raising your head up and down?
Give me your assurance that
I can't understand you, sir.
I want to defend myself. I have the right to speak on behalf of my Constitution.
Mr. Marshall, I don't think you have accomplished your purpose by that contrivance. We will take another recess.
I want to speak on behalf of my constitutional rights. You can't deny me my rights. You can't deny me my constitutional rights.
Bobby Seale's only attempt in that courtroom was an attempt to represent himself.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I must tell you the law requires that the judge maintain order and take such steps as are warranted.
Accordingly, the marshals have endeavored to maintain order in the manner that you see here in the courtroom.
Your Honor, I move on behalf of the other 7 defendants for the immediate removal of the gag and the arm and the leg cuffs. Mr. Seal was only attempting to assert his rights to self-defense under the Constitution.
I direct you, ladies and gentlemen, not to hold it against any of the 7 other defendants when these measures are taken with respect to defendant Mr. Seal. These measures indicate no evidence of his guilt or lack of guilt.
The marshals would take an hour, maybe 2 hours before the trial began, trying to force this gauze into his mouth.
I said, no, man. No, man. I said, man, what the fuck going on? No.
What are we trying to prove, Your Honor? We won't go in there and sit in the trial while Bobby Seale is bound and gagged.
Meanwhile, Bobby and the Panthers are saying, don't do anything.
Mr. Frappoli, you indicated to the prosecutor that you received instructions from your superiors not to participate in any violent actions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, do you consider the forcible removal of a president of a university from the speaker's lectern a violent action?
Len.
If Your Honor, please, the buckles on the leather strap that's holding Mr. Seale's hand is digging into his hand. Could he be assisted?
The marshal concludes that he needs assistance, of course.
Your Honor, are we going to stop the medieval torture that is going on in this court? Your Honor, this is no longer a court of order. He's putting his elbow above his mouth. Your Honor, this is an unholy disgrace.
Created by Mr. Kunstler.
Created by none other than you.
Why don't you come down here and watch this, Judge? You fascist dogs! You low-life son of a bitch!
Somebody go protect him! Your Honor, may the record show that that comment was by Mr. Dellinger.
May the record show that Furman's a Nazi!
And that is Mr. Rubin speaking.
Everything you say will be taken down.
Your Honor, he's being choked to death! Cruel and unusual punishment! You're a fascist dog, Judge! You know, if you're gonna gag him, why don't you just kill him? How's that?
You are not permitted to address the court, Mr. Hoffman.
This isn't a court, it's a neon oven!
That was the defendant Hoffman who spoke.
This disruption started when these guys got into overkill. Don't you see it's the same thing as last year in Chicago? This is the same thing!
Mr. Hoffman, you are ordered to refrain from speaking. Mr. Seal, you mind looking over here? I would like to get from you, sir, your assurance as an American citizen that you will not be guilty of any disruptive act during the continuance of this trial. May I have your assurance? Let the record show that the defendant did not reply.
If Your Honor, please.
What is it, Mr. Weinstein? Weinberg.
Wine glass, Your Honor. If Your Honor, please. Mr. Seal was endeavoring to answer the court by writing, so I would like to read the note that Mr. Seal has written. I want and demand my right to defend myself.
I am calling for an end to this. I don't think you have seen it in your experience, nor have I in mine.
He is being treated in accordance with the law.
Not in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, which is the supreme law.
I don't need someone to come here from New York or wherever you come from to tell me that there is a Constitution in the United States. Why should I have to go through a trial and be assailed in an obscene manner?
But, Your Honor, that is the reaction of a black man not being permitted to defend himself. If you had said defend yourself, none of this would have happened.
I have lived a long time, and you are the first person who has ever suggested that I have discriminated against a black man. You don't know me, sir. But I am as good a friend of the black people in this community as they have. And if you don't believe it, read the books. Come into my chambers, and I will show you on the wall what one of the great newspapers of the city said editorially about me in connection with a school segregation case.
Your Honor, this is not a time for self-praise on either side of the lectern.
It isn't self-praise, sir. It is defense. I won't let a lawyer stand before the bar and charge me with being a bigot.
For God's sake, we are seeking the solution to a human problem, not whether you feel good or bad.
That black men and white men can walk down the same
That third day was a scene.
but it caused me not to be gagged the fourth day.
The court has done its best to prevent the repeated efforts to delay and obstruct this trial. As we all know, the defendant, Bobby G. Seale, has been guilty of conduct in the presence of the court of so grave a character as to continually disrupt the orderly administration of justice.
That's a lie. I stood up and spoke on behalf of myself.
You are making it very difficult for me, Mr. Seale.
You are making it very difficult for me, Judge Hoffman.
I find that the acts, statements, and conduct of the defendant Seale each constitute contempt of this court, a deliberate, willful attack upon the administration of justice, and accordingly, the defendant Seale will be committed to the custody of the Attorney General for imprisonment. Mr. Seale, you are free to address the court on the question of your punishment.
How come I couldn't speak before?
This is a special occasion.
If you're talking about putting me in jail, I have nothing to say about that. I have something to say about the fact that I want to defend myself still.
The court will be in recess.
Wait a minute. I got a right. What's this cat trying to pull now? I'm leaving I can't stay? I demand an immediate trial right now.
I'm sorry, I can't try two cases at the same time, sir.
I have a right to go through with this trial. I want an immediate trial. You can't call it a mistrial. I'm put in jail for 4 years for nothing. You gonna put me in jail now? I want my coat. Free Bobby! 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 Free Bobby!
This was the human spirit winning over the overwhelming power of the state. They just couldn't shut the guy up, so they chucked him, got him out.
I'm assigned to the subversive unit. I joined Veterans for Peace. I'm on the executive board of the Chicago Peace Council and the steering committee of the new mobilization.
While a member of these organizations, were you in your undercover capacity as a Chicago police officer?
Yes, sir, I was.
Would you relate to the court, please, what you heard at the meetings at which you were present?
Well, Ronnie Davis said that the people should have a wall-to-wall sit-in in front of the Conrad Hilton. They could break windows, pull fire alarm boxes, stone police cars, break street lights. Mr. Rubin said that they could start fires at the Loop. Mr. Freund said that they could purchase ammonia and throw this at the police. Lee Weiner said that they could let the air out of tires or jam up traffic. Tom Hayden said that if the city doesn't give in to our demands, there would be war on the streets. Mr. Dellinger said that we should have the march, and when stopped by the police, we sit down and practice the old forms of non-resistance and non-violence.
Mr. Kunstler is laughing so he can influence the jury with the impression that this is absurd.
It is absurd. It is. He's a vaudeville actor.
I like being here. This is very interesting.
That is the best statement I have heard here during this trial. You said you enjoyed being here?
Sure. It's good theater.
Isn't it a fact that what makes your memory so accurate today is the 14 hours you spent in discussing your testimony with the prosecutor?
Objection.
I sustain the objection.
Now I ask you, officer, to look at the 7 men at that table. Isn't it a fact that in the entire period of time that you spent with them in their company, at their meetings, the streets, the park, that you never saw one of them commit a single act of violence? You never saw any of them strike a policeman.
No, sir.
Did any of them ever throw a rock?
I don't believe I saw them.
Did you ever see any of them break a window?
No, sir.
Did you ever see any of them making a firebomb?
No, sir.
Little incidents were breaking out quickly between police officers and members of the crowd. They were spitting and shoving and pushing and fighting. And the officers responded and they charged the crowd, and the crowd charged back. And a serious disorder broke out.
Isn't it true that you heard the National Guard Well, somebody in the National Guard was trigger happy and released tear gas while the crowd was proceeding orderly out of the park.
I have no recollection of hearing that. The thing that continually crossed my mind is this unlawful assembly in the street. That was foremost in my mind. I had no intention of permitting a mob to take over the street.
Now, did there come a time when nightclubs were used on the people?
There was some use of night batons, yes.
There was quite a lot, wasn't there?
I don't know. Quite a bit. There was some.
Did you yourself see any night batons land on people's heads?
Oh, yes.
Isn't it true that you saw the Chicago police officers beating people while they were already on the ground?
In some instances, yes. But the person on the ground was kicking and fighting back.
Is there not some training information on the proper use of a baton?
Yes.
A training document says, never swing the baton as a club. Is that true?
Yes, but it's not an absolute prohibition.
Being very specific, what did you find wrong with what your police did, if anything?
Well, I really feel badly that the police were unable to control this vicious, mean, willful, unlawful crowd without injury. That I deeply regret. As far as the police tactics, some officers went a little beyond what I expect them to do as professional police officers. As a result of that incident, we have re-strengthened our training program. Each and every day, dissent changes, so police procedures must be revised in order to keep pace with what's happening in the country. Revolution is very possible. Terror is very close to us.
Your Honor, a very interesting speech. I really don't mind, except I do think that it's not responsive.
We were facing 10 years in prison.
The goal of our defense was, in a sense, to recreate Chicago.
With expert witnesses on the counterculture.
We decided to use the trial to put the government on trial.
I was helping the boy off the ground. I was facing away out from the benches. At this point, I turned around toward the benches, and I saw a man with his back to me, bending over a girl on the ground. This was a man in a business suit. Also bending over the girl on the ground was a policeman, holding her down on the ground and hitting her. I ran towards them, shouting to stop, and the plainclothesman turned around and knocked me on my back. Then he took me by the hair, and he spun me around, and he said, "Take this one, too. Arrest them both." He called the other girl a black bitch, and he said, "We know how to treat you animals."
What is your present occupation?
I'm an assistant safety director for a candy company.
Directing your attention to August 28th, 1968 in the afternoon, where were you and what, if anything, occurred?
I was in Grant Park. A speaker was telling the crowd to back up, sit down, and was asking the police to please clear out of the area.
Could you identify the speaker whose voice you heard?
I believe it was David Dellinger.
Now, after you saw the crowd move, what, if anything, did you see?
A platoon of helmeted police marched in and stopped about 20 yards from the crowd. Another platoon came marching in maybe 30 yards behind them. They were counting cadence and slapping their sticks in their hands.
Then what, if anything, did you see the platoon do?
They marched directly into the crowd in step, broke ranks when they hit the line of marshals in front of the crowd, and chopped their way 100 yards into a tightly packed crowd, beating people all the way.
Wisconsin! Mr. Chairman, most delegates to this convention do not know that thousands of young people are being beaten in the streets of Chicago.
Wisconsin is not recognized for that purpose.
Rennie was just covered with blood. His head was split open, his shirt was covered with blood.
At that point, I thought I wasn't going to make it.
I'm a member of the British Parliament. I was first elected in 1964.
Were you in Chicago during the period of the Democratic National Convention?
Yes.
Well, now, we call our senators here senator, and we call our congressmen congressman.
You can call me honorable member for Rochester and Chatham.
Oh, that's a little long. I'll just have to call you Madam Witness.
I was just trying to make it easy for you.
Oh, don't make it easy for me. That's not your responsibility.
Mine's to tell the truth.
Would you indicate what you saw on the street Wednesday, August 28th?
Well, I went out across, Balboa Street. I crossed the street and went onto the pavement off Michigan Avenue. I saw a whole crowd of people across the street, and I saw a line of police. I went up to one of the young persons there, and I asked them what was happening. I just said, "What's going on?" Well, first of all, I had the CS gas, and I'd been coughing and choking with the other people. And then I was grabbed from behind. A voice said, "Move along there." And I said, "But I was just talking to these young people." And then I was picked up, grabbed and thrown into a police wagon. Those are the facts, my lord.
I teach and recite poetry and lecture at universities.
Did you ever study abroad?
Oh, yes, I studied in India and Japan. I studied mantra yoga, meditation exercise, sitting quietly, breathing exercises to quiet the body and calm the mind.
Did you have any occasion to meet with Abbie Hoffman?
Yeah?
Do you recall what Mr. Hoffman said in the course of conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yippee. He said that politics was becoming theater and magic, that it was the manipulation of imagery through the mass media that was confusing and hypnotizing the people in the United States, making them accept a war which they really didn't believe in, and that we ourselves might get together in Chicago and invite teachers to present different ideas of what's wrong with the planet, what we can do to stop the pollution crisis, what we can do to stop the war.
After he spoke to you, what, if anything, was your response to his suggestion?
Well, I was worried whether or not the whole scene would become violent. I was worried whether the government would let us do something that was funnier or prettier.
Object, Your Honor. Ask that it be stricken. It's not responsive.
Yes, I sustain the objection.
Sir, that was our conversation.
Now, directing your attention to Sunday, August 25th, what did you do in the park?
Well, there was an appearance of a great mass of policemen going through the center of the park. I was afraid. I felt adrenaline run through my body, so I sat down on a green hillside with a group of younger people, and I began chanting the magic password which cuts through all emergency illusion.
All right, we've had a demonstration.
All right.
From here on, I object.
I sustain the objection.
If the court please, there's been much testimony by the government's witnesses, whether there were stones or people throwing things or using obscenities. Why can't we also hear what's being said in the area of calming the crowd?
I have no objection to the two ohms that we've heard. However, I just don't want it to go on all morning.
The two, however you characterize what the witness did, may remain on record, and he may not continue in the same vein.
Now, at approximately 8 p.m., what was occurring in the park?
There was a great crowd of people listening to ministers conduct a ceremony. Everybody was seated around the cross, which was in the center of hundreds of people who were singing, "We shall overcome." And then, after a short period of time, there was a burst of smoke and tear gas around the cross, and I turned and I said, "They have gassed the cross of Christ."
Your Honor, I have some materials that I'll have to get to properly carry on my cross-examination of this witness. It will take me some time.
Are you suggesting a recess?
I would think yes, Your Honor.
All right, we will go until 2 o'clock.
Your Honor, we asked for 5 minutes 2 days ago, and you refused to give it to us.
You will have to cease that disrespectful tone.
It's not disrespect, it's an angry tone, Your Honor.
Yes, it is. It is. I will grant the motion of the governor.
You refused us 5 minutes. Why the different treatment?
You are shouting at the court.
Your Honor, everybody has raised their voice in this courtroom, including Your Honor.
I have never shouted at you during this trial.
You have raised your voice in this courtroom, Your Honor.
You have been disrespectful.
It is not disrespectful.
It's sometimes even worse than that.
Oh, Your Honor.
Will you step off the witness stand?
He's just trying to calm us both down.
I needed no calming down.
Ginsburg, you're named as kind of the yippie religious leader. Do you think that that's a fair designation?
Oh, no. Well, leader is a word we try to get away from. I mean, we tried to get away from the authoritarian thing. It was more like,
Religious teacher?
religious experimenter, huh?
Now, concerning poetry that you've written, there's a poem called The Night Apple.
The Night Apple, yes.
Would you recite that poem for the jury?
Last night, I dreamed of the one I loved for 7 long years. But I did not see a face. I saw the familiar presence of the body. Sweat, skin, eyes, feces, sperm, saliva, all one odor and mortal taste.
Could you explain to the jury what the religious significance of that poem is?
If you would take a wet dream as a religious experience, I could. It was a description of a wet dream, sir.
Do you have a poem that you entitle Howl?
Howl, yes, but Howl is a big poem. I don't know it.
Well, could you recite whatever fragments you do recall?
Yes. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, who shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no other crime than their own wild cooking, pederasty, intoxication, who protested the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism. What sphinx of cement and aluminum bashed open these skulls and ate their brains and imagination, Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ash cans and unobtainable dollars, children screaming in hallways, old men weeping in parks, boys sobbing in war, Moloch, 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 the nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, Moloch the heavy judger of men, Moloch the crossbone soulless jailhouse and Congress of sorrows, Moloch whose buildings are judgment, Moloch the vast stone of war, Moloch the stunned government.
My name is Abby. I'm an orphan of America.
Where do you reside?
I live in Woodstock Nation.
Will you tell the court and the jury where it is?
Sure. It's a nation of alienated young people. We carry it around with us as a state of mind, much like the Sioux Indians carried around the Sioux Nation with them. It's a nation dedicated to cooperation versus competition, to the idea that people should have a better means of exchange than property or money.
When were you born?
Psychologically, 1960.
Between your birth and 1960, what, if anything, occurred in your life?
Nothing. I believe it's called an American education.
Objection.
Objection sustained.
Now, can you tell the court and jury what is your present occupation?
Yes, I am a cultural revolutionary. Well, I'm really a defendant. Full time.
Now, taking you back to 1960.
Objection. I sustain the objection.
Your Honor, this date has great relevance to the trial. I'm going to bring him down through Chicago.
Not in my presence, you're not going to bring him down. I sustain the objection to the question.
What? My background has nothing to do with my state of mind?
Will you remain quiet while I'm making a ruling? I know you have no respect for me.
Your Honor, this is totally unwarranted. I think your remarks call for a mistrial.
Motion will be denied.
Now, directing your attention to September 1967, what were you doing?
I was doing a number of things. Among them was a meeting I had with defendant Jerry Rubin. Jerry said that the war in Vietnam was not just an accident, but that it was a byproduct of a kind of system, a capitalist system in the country, and that we had to begin to put forth new kinds of values, especially for the young people in this country, to make a kind of society in which a Vietnam War would not be possible. I said that America was in the last stages of its empire and that it was bent on devouring its children. I said that the Pentagon is a five-sided symbol of evil in most religions and that we might be able to approach this from a religious point of view. If we got large numbers of people to surround the Pentagon, we might be able to exorcise it of its evil spirits. So we measured the Pentagon to see how many people it would take to fit around it. Of course, we only had to measure one side because then you just multiply 1 times 5 and, you know, the Pentagon, 5 sides. And you know what happened? Do you know what happened? Surprise! We got arrested. Do you know it's illegal to measure the Pentagon? I didn't know it up to that point. What a surprise. Well, anyway, when we got arrested, they said, what do you think you're doing? And we said, see, we want to get a permit to raise the Pentagon 300 feet in the air. They said, what? How about 10? So we said, okay.
Your Honor, I would ask Mr. Weinglass, please get on with the trial of this case and stop playing around with raising the Pentagon 10 feet or 300 feet off the ground.
Your Honor, I am glad to see Mr. Schultz finally concedes that things like levitating the Pentagon building, putting LSD in the water, 10,000 people walking nude on Lake Michigan, and a $200,000 bribe attempt are all playing around. I am willing to concede that fact, that it was all playing around. It was a play idea of this witness, and if he's willing to concede it, we can all go home.
I sustain the objection.
At this time, we would like to introduce a film by Abbie Hoffman. Great. That we regard this to be absolutely essential and indispensable to our case. Now, nothing better shows Abbie Hoffman's state of mind.
The young land started growing, the young blood started flowing, but
The Yippies decided to enter their own candidate in the presidential
The
sweepstakes.
film is not serious, I concede it, but neither was the Yippie myth.
The film will not be admitted as evidence.
Abbie Hoffman, prior to coming to Chicago from April 1968 onto the week of the convention, did you enter into an agreement with David Dellinger, John Freunds, Tom Hayden, Jerry Rubin, Lee Weiner, or Rennie Davis to come to the city of Chicago for the purpose of encouraging and promoting violence during the convention week?
An agreement?
Yes.
Couldn't agree on lunch.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Go ahead, Dick.
Did you symbolically urinate on the Pentagon, Mr. Hoffman?
I symbolically urinate on the Pentagon?
Yes.
I didn't get that close. Pee on the walls of the Pentagon? Oh, you're getting to be out of sight, actually.
Are you done, Mr. Hoffman?
I'm done when you are.
The fact is, Mr. Hoffman, you were trying to create a situation where the state and the United States government would have to bring on the National Guard in order to protect the delegates so that it would appear that the convention had to be held under military conditions. Isn't that a fact?
Come on. You can do that with a yo-yo in this country. It's quite easy. Just look around this courtroom. Look at all the troops around.
Mr. Hoffman, while you were in Chicago, you deliberately told your police tales that you had had a fight with Rubin.
Yes, deliberately.
In order to destroy any charges of conspiracy. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, yes. God, I was so sneaky. Yes, I told that to the policeman. It didn't work, obviously.
Mr. Hoffman, while you were negotiating with city officials, you were secretly attending meetings and planning for spontaneous acts of violence during the Democratic National Convention. Isn't that right?
How do you plan for spontaneous acts of violence? I would have no idea how to do that.
You wrote, did you not, that you dismissed the thought of attempting to take over a building right across the street from the police headquarters. Isn't that right, Mr. Hoffman?
Wait. Did you say that I had thoughts or that I wrote that I had the thoughts? You know, there is a difference.
It is a convenient difference, isn't it, Mr. Hoffman?
I don't know what you mean by that, Mr. Schultz. I never been on trial for my thoughts before.
Your Honor, that's outside the scope of the direct examination.
Mr. Weingrass, I overrule the objection.
Winegrass. Great combination.
Now, I order you to answer the question, sir. You are required by law.
What, I just get a yes or a no? All my years on the stand, I never heard a ruling like that.
Mr. Hoffman, isn't it a fact that one of the reasons why you came to Chicago was simply to wreck American society.
My feeling at the time, and still is, that society is going to wreck itself. I've said that on a number of occasions. I said that our role is to survive while society comes tumbling down around us. Our role is to survive.
No matter what constituency in America that I'm organized, no matter what community, I'm always confronted with that right off, that we can't win, that they're always going to win. The utility company wins all the time. It's the way it's supposed to be. Washington gets its way. It's the most anti-democratic attitude. And you sit there and you wonder, like, how, where'd they pick this up along the way? I didn't. I mean, I must have fell off the truck. Because I don't believe it for a minute.
Your Honor, is it possible to conduct this direct examination without having all these marshals standing directly behind me? We haven't had that for the other witnesses.
I leave the matter of security, Mr. Consular, to the U.S. Marshal. I find him a very competent man.
What is your name?
Richard Joseph Daly.
What is your occupation?
I am the mayor of the city of Chicago.
Who was the chairman of the Park Commissions in 1968?
The proper designation is president, not chairman. And the president was William McFetridge.
Is that the same William McFetridge who announced your first candidacy for mayor in 1954?
Objection, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection.
Is it true, Mayor Daley, that Mr. McFetridge once said, the parks are not for dissenters?
Objection.
I sustain the objection.
Mayor Daley.
Please. Hey, she didn't do anything. What are you doing?
Your Honor, what is happening in the rear row?
Will you let the marshal take care of the rear row?
Hey, what are you doing?
You're hitting one of our staff. I don't understand. Your Honor, we have information that some of the people doing the removing are not marshals, but employees of the city of Chicago.
If everybody will be quiet and listen to the testimony of the witness, there will be no disorder. Will you please proceed, sir, with the direct examination of this witness? Otherwise, I will direct the witness to leave the stand.
Mayor Daley, on April 15th, did you not order your police department to shoot to kill and shoot to maim black people in the city of Chicago?
Your Honor, I object to the question on the grounds that it is leading, suggestive, immaterial.
Your Honor, I have to ask a leading question in order to move.
No, you don't have to. I won't permit you to.
Then at the moment, I move that Mayor Daley be declared a hostile witness.
What? The mayor's been the most friendly witness.
I want to indicate the word hostile, Your Honor. All of the defendants feel Mayor Daley is a hostile witness. Hostile. In the sense that they attribute to him everything that happened to them in collusion with other people in the city of Chicago last summer.
I don't know whether the witness is hostile as a witness. He may have been hostile as a mayor, but he may not be hostile as a witness. His manner has been that of a gentleman. Motion of the defense will be denied.
Mayor Daley, on the 28th of August, 1968.
We wouldn't have to have Gestapo tactics.
Did you say to Senator Rubikoff?
Oh, Your Honor,
Did you say to him, quote, fuck you, you juice?
Now listen to that.
You lousy
I object to this kind of conduct in the courtroom.
Unquote.
No! Foolish and proper questions.
Court will recess for 15 minutes.
Just leave. Let's go. I want this.
Hey. What's with all these lawyers and everything here, huh? Why don't you and me settle this right here? Let's go. Come on.
I was at the Americana Hotel in New York City, attending a press conference. It was to announce the formation of what we have now come to know of as the Yippie movement.
And what did you do at that press conference?
Well, where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have
just a minute,
all
young
the
lady.
flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Gone to graveyard girl.
I'm sorry. Judge would like to speak to you.
We don't allow any singing in this court. I'm sorry. We're not here to be entertained. We're trying a very important case.
The song's not an entertainment, Your Honor. It's a song of peace and what happens to men and women during wartime.
I forbid her from singing during this trial.
The first time I came to the city of Chicago was to visit the International Amphitheater in a poultry judging contest in 1956. I had just won the Eastern United States poultry judging contest in 4-H. I was 16.
Now, directing your attention to the evening of November 20th, 1967, could you relate the words you spoke?
I began by holding up a small steel ball that was green, about the size of a tennis ball. And I said, this bomb was dropped on a city of 100,000 people, a city called Namding. I said it was delivered by an American fighter jet, and that when this cluster bomb exploded, about 640 of these steel balls were spewed into the sky. Now, one of these steel balls, I explained, was roughly 3 times the power of an old-fashioned hand grenade. And with 640 of them going off, you can spray 250,000 square yards with steel pellets and shrapnel. Every living thing exposed will die, whether it's a water buffalo or a water buffalo boy. If this bomb were to go off in this room, everyone in the room would die. But it wouldn't destroy the lecture podium, wouldn't damage the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It takes life, but it leaves the institution. It's the ideal weapon for the mentality that reasons that life is less precious than property. Then I said that I, as an American citizen, am deeply perturbed that we live in a country where our own government's lying to American people. I said, I'm going to the Democratic National Convention because I want the world to know that there are thousands of young people in this country who do not want to see a rigged convention rubber stamp the war.
Isn't it a fact that your plan in Chicago was to combine the peacefulness of Gandhi and the violence of active resistance? Isn't that a fact?
No, it's not a fact. In fact, that's not even close. And you know it.
Your Honor, may we strike that? He whispered to the court reporter, and you know it.
No, I made that man-to-man to Mr. Foreign.
Your Honor, ask the jury to disregard that. Since as a lawyer in court, I can't properly respond to it.
I hope after this trial you can properly respond, Mr. Foreign. I really do.
I don't know what you're...
That you and I can sit down and talk about what happened in Chicago and why it happened.
Mr. Witness.
I'd like to do that very much.
Mr. Witness.
Your Honor.
Do you hear me, sir?
Yes, I do.
You didn't respond to my question. I don't accept your apologies.
Isn't it a fact that all the vile and vulgar propaganda that the yippies were passing out was to make the authorities look repressive?
Sir, no one had to make that city look repressive. The city was repressive.
You and your people wanted violence in Lincoln Park, didn't you?
Your questions embarrass me. They're so terrible. They really do.
Well, answer it.
It's my belief that it was you who wanted the violence, Mr. Foreign, not me. I did not want violence.
You did want to impose an international humiliation on the people that ruled this country. Isn't that correct?
I'm afraid our government has already humiliated itself in the international community, sir. Can't you understand? It's so simple. I'm just trying to find a way that this generation can make this country something better than what it's been.
Ralph Abernathy, he had been the leader of the mule train. That was a demonstration by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of poor people.
Your Honor, we had originally contacted Dr. Ralph Abernathy to be a witness, but he was out of the country. He has just returned. He is arriving at this moment at O'Hare Airport. We think his testimony is crucial.
I certainly am not going to wait for him. There have been several witnesses called during this trial whose testimony could not even be presented to the jury. Singers, performers. I'll deny your motion.
Your Honor, I think that what you have just said is about the most outrageous statement that I have ever heard from a bench, and I'm going to have my say right now. I'm trembling. I'm so outraged for you to say in a technicality that we cannot put Dr. Abernathy on the stand. Dr. Abernathy is president of the Southern Christian Leadership Movement. He is chairman of the Mobilization Against War. He has relevant testimony. I know this is not a fair trial. I know it in my heart. And I am going to return to my chair with a full realization that everything I have learned throughout my life has gone for naught, that there is no meaning in this court, that there is no law in this court.
Out with those applauders!
Hey, I applauded too, Your Honor. Throw me out.
Your Honor, may we proceed with the rebuttal case of the government?
Yes, you may.
Now, calling your attention to Wednesday, August 28th at 5:45. Did you have occasion to see David Dellinger?
I did. He was confronting me at the head of the march.
Did you see where Dellinger went?
He left with the head of the group that were carrying the flag.
Bullshit. That's an absolute lie.
Did you get that, Mr. Reporter?
Let's argue about what you stand for and what I stand for, but let's not go making things up like that.
All of those remarks were made in the presence of the court and jury by Mr. Dellinger.
Sometimes the human spirit can stand so much, Your Honor. And I think David Dellinger has reached the...
I have never heard in more than half a century of the bar a man using profanity in this court.
You haven't sat here as a defendant and listened to liars on the witness stand.
You're a snake. And we have to try and put you in jail for 10 years for telling lies about us, Dick Schultz.
Be quiet, Mr. Dellinger.
When this trial is over, the judge will go to Florida. But if he has his way, the rest of us will go to jail. And what we're fighting for is not just us, but for all the rest of the people in this country who are being oppressed.
Take that man into custody, Mr. Marshall! Take him into custody!
Into custody?
Into custody!
Go ahead, Dick Schultz. Just put everybody in jail.
Dick Schultz is a Nazi if I ever knew one.
You brought this on, Your Honor. This is your fault. This is exactly what happened in Chicago.
This court is bullshit.
There he is, saying the same.
No, I said it.
David Dellinger did not make that last remark.
It was the defendant.
Everything in this court is bullshit.
Leave the courtroom!
Good. You can jail a revolutionary, Julie, but you can't jail a revolution.
You're a disgrace. You would have served Hitler better.
That was Mr. Hoffman.
You're damn right it was.
I saw him and I heard him.
Hey, Stuck. Hey, stick it up your bowling ball, pal. Hey, Julie, how are your war stocks doing?
Mr. Marshall, order him to remain quiet.
Order us? You'll have to cut our tongues out to order us. Fuck you guys. You're the laughing stock of the world, Julius Hoffman. You are the laughing stock of the world. Every kid in the world hates you.
To see this trial right, you got to understand that this trial was being seen by millions of people as a one-minute cartoon each night.
May the record show the defendants Hoffman and Rubin came in attired in what might be called collegiate robes.
That's judges' robes.
Some might even consider them judicial robes. Your idea, Mr. Consular? Another one of your brilliant ideas?
Your Honor, I can't take the credit for this one.
That amazes me.
I sustain that objection. Well, I object, I sustain. Well,
Please sit down.
well, I sustain. Well, I sustain that overrule. Well, I sustain. Off with the robe. Off with the robes.
I proudly accept the nomination of our party. Surely we have now learned the lesson. Violence breeds counter-violence, and it cannot be condoned, whatever the source.
The point is that they came here wanting a riot. We have shown that these defendants, all 7 of them, had a common purpose of bringing disruption and inciting violence in this city, and that all 7 participated. working together to further these plans. Oh, they never explicitly said, you do that to blow up that. That is not how they did it. It was tacit understanding, a working together in all these meetings that they had. And that is how they conspired. They came here to riot.
They didn't look for the violence with the police. They were a crowd that wanted to march. They weren't permitted to march. They stayed in the streets and chanted. But does that mean that the police should wade into them and beat them and club them? Is that the way we've come to deal with people in this country who adamantly insist on the right to protest?
We are living in extremely troubled times. An intolerable war has divided and dismayed us. Racism at home and poverty cause despair and discouragement. In a so-called affluent society, we have people who can't even approximate the decent life. These are rough problems, terrible problems. But they don't go away by destroying their critics. They don't vanish by sending men to jail. You can crucify a Jesus. You can poison a Socrates. You can hang John Brown or Nathan Hale. You can kill Che Guevara. You can jail Eugene Debs or a Bobby Seale. You can assassinate John Kennedy or a Martin Luther King. But the problems remain.
Remember at the beginning of this case, they were calling them all by diminutive names, Rennie and Abby and Jerry, trying to pretend that they were young kids? They're not kids. They're highly sophisticated, educated men, and they are evil men. Now, there are millions of kids who naturally resent authority. They feel the horrors of racism and the frustration of this terribly difficult war. They're impatient for a change. You want to fix things up. And there's another thing about a kid, if we all remember, that you have an attraction to evil. Evil is exciting, it's interesting. And these guys take advantage, evilly, to corrupt those kids and use them for their purposes. And you know what their purpose was? To disrupt, to have war in the streets, tear the city apart, fuck up the convention. Laws to these people are viewed as suggestions that they can obey or not obey, just as they please. Oh, they're sophisticated and they're smart and they're just as evil as they can be. Now, can you imagine, you know the way they name dropped. Can you imagine, and it's almost blasphemous to say it, that they named Jesus? They named Martin Luther King? Can you imagine those men supporting these?
Yes, I can. I can imagine it because it's true.
Remove these people, Mr. Marshall.
That's my daughter.
I don't want to listen to any more of these disgusting...
Don't you hit her like that. I saw you. That man hit her on the head for saying the truth.
Mr. Marshall, have that man sit down.
See how it works. Don't hit her.
He did hit her.
Oh, bunk.
I saw him hit her.
Remove that woman. Remove her and don't let her return, Mr. Marshall.
Abby Hoffman walked over to my youngest daughter, put his arms around her, and said, "Your dad'll be all right." She's never forgotten that, neither have I.
Contempt, by definition, is any act calculated to hinder or disrupt the court and the administration of justice, and to lessen the court's authority knowingly and deliberately.
The contempt occurred right after the jury retired.
I don't think we all, really fully understood.
They were at the whim of the judge.
I find these defendants in this case and the lawyers have committed numerous acts which have evinced a total disregard for the proper conduct of any trial. I will first consider the conduct of the defendant, David Dellinger. Mr. Dellinger, you care to say anything? Only in respect to punishment, I will hear you. I don't want you to talk politics.
Well, that's why I needed to stand up, because you tried to keep what you call politics, which means the truth, out of this courtroom.
I will ask you to sit down.
Therefore, it's necessary.
I won't let you go any further.
You want us to be like good Germans, supporting the evils of our decade. Then you want us to be like good Jews and go politely and quietly into the concentration camps while you in this court suppress freedom and truth. Well, I am not prepared to do that. Then you want us to stay in our place like black people.
Mr. Marshall,
like poor people, like women are supposed to stay in their
Sit
place.
down, Mr.
Well, a
Dellinger.
new generation of Americans will not support tyranny. That's a travesty of justice. And I will reflect the spirit.
Take him out!
You're a tyrant, Hoffman!
What are you doing to us, Judge? What are you doing?
Pilot, you satisfied now? Huh? You satisfied? You have just jailed one of the most beautiful and one of the most courageous men in the United States.
All right. Now we will talk about you, Mr. Davis. Care to be heard?
You may not believe this, but we came here to have a trial, even though we regarded it as unconstitutional and unjust. Judge, you represent all that is old, ugly, bigoted, and repressive in this country. And I will tell you that the spirit at the defense table will devour you and your sickness in the next generation.
See you in jail. Whole country's in jail.
See you in jail, brother.
We now come to the consideration of the matter of Thomas Hayden. Mr. Hayden?
The problem that I think most people have who want to punish us is that punishment does not seem to have effect. Even as the elder Dellinger is taken off, a younger Dellinger fights back. So, Your Honor, before your eyes, you're seeing the most vital ingredient of the system collapsing because the system does not hold together.
Oh, don't be so pessimistic. Our system isn't collapsing. Fellows as smart as you could do awfully well under our system. I'm not trying to convert you, mind you.
We don't want a place in your regiment, Julie.
I can state only one thing that affected my feelings about punishment, and that is that I would like to have a child.
There's where the federal system can do you no good.
The federal system can do you no good in trying to prevent the birth of a new world.
Right on!
I will hear from you, Mr. Hoffman, if you will be respectful.
Respectful. My 6-year-old daughter sent me a note yesterday. She said maybe the judge should change his glasses, because then he could really see what the defendants are all about. When the law is in tyranny, the only order is disrespect, and that's what we showed. And that's what all honorable men of free will show.
I will hear Mr. Rubin.
Judge Hoffman, Your Honor, I came to this trial. I wanted to be indicted. To be indicted at this trial is like winning the Academy Award of Protest. You have said to us, respect or else, without any moral argument. And frankly, sir, I think that you have shown more disrespect towards us than we could have ever have shown to you. We're going to jail with smiles on our faces. There are millions of kids who love us, who identify with us, who are going to fight to free us. And that, sir, that is the revolution.
Mr. Weiner, if you'll confine your remarks to punishment, I will hear you.
Sure. Okay. Throughout this trial, I've sat in a quiet rage as I've seen over and over again the best men of our country belittled and attacked. Now, I understand that because you are what you are, I can't personally condemn you.
I admonish you, sir. I am supposed to be especially tolerant because I was a member of the faculty of the school that you are or were a teacher.
Yes, I even understand that there's a plaque naming an auditorium after you.
Well, you're nice to tell the assembled spectators.
I'm pleased to report to you that the plaque has been ripped off the wall.
Plaque?
Apparently, while the Board of Trustees feels affection for you, the student body does not.
Now we come to the consideration of John Freund.
When history is written, the men who sat at this table, our table here, that's the heroes.
This matter now involves the conduct of Mr. William Kunstler. Do you wish to be heard, Mr. Kunstler?
I have tried with all my heart, faithfully, to represent my clients in the face of what I consider repressive and unjust conduct toward them. If I have to pay with my liberty for such repression, then that is the price of my beliefs and sensibilities. I can only hope that my fate does not deter the lawyers in the difficult days that lie ahead, who will be asked to defend clients against a steadily increasing governmental encroachment upon their most fundamental liberties.
Mr. White.
What the court has chosen to label as direct contempt, I cite as nothing more than the argument of counsel in the heat of battle. And I think you do a disservice to the profession. I face punishment, whatever punishment means. But I welcome joining the defendants and Bill Kunstler in what has been for me the warmest and richest association of my life.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am informed you have reached a verdict. I direct the clerk to read the verdicts.
We, the jury, find the defendants Lee Weiner and John Freund not guilty as charged. We, the jury, find the defendants David Dellinger, Renard Davis, Thomas Hayden, Abbott Hoffman, and Jerry Rubin not guilty of conspiring, but guilty of intending to organize, promote, and incite to riot.
I now proceed with the imposition of sentence. I will hear for your clients, Mr. Kunstler.
The defendants will speak for themselves.
All right. Mr. Dellinger, you have a right to speak in your own behalf.
First, I would like to say that I feel that every judge should be required to spend some time in prison before sentencing other people, in order that he might become aware of the degrading, anti-human conditions that persist in our prisons. I feel more compassion for you, sir, than I do hostility. I believe that you're a man who's had too much power over too many people for too many years. What happens to us here, however unjustified, is very slight compared to what has already happened to the Vietnamese people, to the black people in this country, and to the criminals with whom we're now spending our days. Finally, there's something ambivalent in my attitude towards you, because I think one can see something spunky in you that one has to admire, however misguided or intolerant I believe that you are.
Mr. Davis, would you like to speak in your own behalf? You have that right.
When I come out of prison, it's going to be to move next door to Tom Ferran. I'm going to be the boy next door to Tom Ferran. The boy next door that could have been a judge. It could have been a prosecutor. I'm going to be the boy next door that organizes his kids into the revolution.
Mr. Hayden.
If you didn't want to make us martyrs, why'd you do it? We could hardly be notorious characters if they'd left us alone in the streets of Chicago, but instead we became the masterminds of a conspiracy, chosen by the government to serve as scapegoats. You know that by doing this, it speeds up the end for the people who do it to us. We had no choice in Chicago. We had no choice in this trial.
Mr. Hoffman.
Mr. Ferrand says that we're un-American. I don't feel un-American. I feel very American. I know those guys up on the wall. I know them better than you, I feel. I know Adams. I know all the Adams. They grew up 20 miles from my home in Massachusetts. Thomas Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson called for a revolution every 10 years. Thomas Jefferson had an agrarian reform program that would make Mao Zedong look like a liberal. George Washington? George Washington grew pot. Well, he called it hemp, but he was probably a pothead. Abraham Lincoln? Abraham Lincoln said in his inaugural address of 1861, he said, "When the people shall grow weary of their constitutional right to amend the government, they shall exert their revolutionary right to dismember and overthrow that government." Now, come on, Julie. If he had made that speech in Lincoln Park, he'd be standing in this courtroom on trial right now, because that speech is intended to incite a riot. I don't know what a riot is. I thought a riot meant having fun. You know, like riot means when you laugh. That's a riot. I'll see you in Florida, Julie.
Mr. Rubin.
You're sentencing us for being ourselves. That's the crime. Julius, you've radicalized more young people than we ever could have. This is the happiest day of my life.
Mr. Clerk, the defendants will be committed to the Attorney General for imprisonment for 5 years, will be fined the sum of $5,000 and costs of prosecution.
$5,000, Judge? Could you make that $350?
Court finds that the defendants are clearly dangerous persons to be at large. Therefore, the commitments will be without bail.
Wait a minute. A riot.
Every one of those defendants was willing to go to jail for 10 years, which was what we faced.
I think my fear was that we'd never get out. Although we did know that history only remembers the guilty. It doesn't remember the not guilty.
As a matter of fact, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the case.
He found that any of our actions were provoked by the actions of the judge and the prosecutors.
It put justice itself, really, in the history of the United States of America on trial.
So your brother's bound and gagged, and they've chained him to a chair. Won't you please come to Chicago?
The significance of the trial is that it showed, I think, for the first time, how ingenious defendants can use the courtroom to get their point across and not to be afraid of authority.
It's lonely out there. It's lonely when you stand on the corner and say the emperor's got no clothes. There's a whole bunch of people that want to come along and say, there's an easy way to do this.
I got married. I have 2 kids, 3 dogs, seat in the state legislature, and I still miss the old days.
The sense that you can be young your whole life happens to be a true statement. And I think along the way we lost touch with some of those values, and perhaps it's not too late to find the best of that time.
I think one has to be an activist for justice if one believes in peace, that you can't get rid of war without getting rid of the causes of war.
I would hope my children do their political work even better than I did mine, and I'm doing mine now.
It was
a very good time in which to live, because you really felt that you were living for something that was very meaningful and very real. And I still feel the same way.
I would describe myself now as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as someone who's as confused politically as I was certain in the 60s.
I'll be a barbecuing, muscle-bound, PhD political scientist who's published several books, still rapping to brothers and sisters, being energetic about myself as a good human being, trying to live as long as W.E.B. Du Bois lived.
The notion that dedication to principle is the basis upon which a life should be built, and that these 8 people for a particular period of time did that and fought hard, took risks, and were ultimately vindicated as being right.